All right, now that you've seen the setup of the base and the legs, now we're going to go to the tubes. I'm going to remove the tubes from the case. I'm going to insert them in the base and show you how to do that. So, basically, this is your travel case for the tubes. That's it down there. Remove them. Now, notice that there's a pin at the bottom of the tubes. That pin goes into a hole at the bottom, and we'll show a close-up of that. The bottom of this has a bearing, and as you compress it, it has creates a nice fluid motion. So insert in the top of the tube. It might be a little tight. If so, you might have to loosen this. And as you insert it, make sure that the pin hole goes right in. The pin goes into the hole at the bottom. That creates for a nice fluid motion. You will notice before you insert the tube into the base has a slightly larger diameter, and there's a plastic insert, it's called a Delrin insert, that makes so it doesn't scratch the side of the tubes. So not all bases are exactly the same. The tolerances are a little different. This one slides in really nicely, but others might be a little tighter. So you might have to play with that a little bit. You might have to open the opening of this collar just slightly, but it should fit in nicely. And as you do that, it should have very little gaps, and it should provide a very smooth movement. The tube has a pin at the bottom, and for this thing to work properly, that pin has to go into the hole at the bottom of the HiPod base. So as you can see, it's very possible that you don't get it in there, so you just kind of reposition it so it goes in nice. That takes advantage of the compression bearings, and you get a nice fluid 360-degree motion without any resistance. All right, now that you've set up your base and you've inserted the tube, I want you to think about this collar squeezing mechanism that serves two functions. One, when you're traveling to the location, you're typically tilting the base back. You might have your tube in, you're tilting the base back. What it does is, if you squeeze this, it squeezes the tube so it can't move. It can't move laterally, and it can't go in or out. So as you're going to the location, let's say you're going down a hill, if this is not squeezed, the tube and the base may separate slightly. It's a point of, just a little thought. But for the most part, it acts as a drag. So some people want a little more resistance than what's present in the natural state of the HiPod base and tubes. By doing this, you create a little resistance. It's a little tighter, it has a little more friction, or you can do it where you completely lock it down so it does not move. And incidentally, if you lift the HiPod tubes, the base will come with it. That's important when you're setting up, going down to the very last stage of the HiPod. It becomes a little harder to lift, and this acts like a second pair of hands. Okay, we'll go into that a little later. All right, when you receive your HiPod, the unit, you'll receive a case separate. There won't be tubes inside. That's simply for travel, for shipping purposes. But when you do use it with the tubes, notice that the case itself telescopes. Just like your tubes, the case telescopes. So you can choose to insert the tubes with the head or without. All right, so imagine you're going to a game. You've left the van and you're actually walking to the field with your HiPod. You tilt it back and you engage the wheels. So you go. Now something to think about, that collar that I mentioned at the top of the base, the drag mechanism, is also a lock mechanism. If I loosen it, the tubes will spin independently of the base and also can slip out. So let's imagine you're going down a hill. If this is not locked, the base could start to separate from the base. So just a nice little point. Just lock it as you're going to the location, and then when you get there, unlock it.